You've heard of Dune, right? Giant sandworms, Zendaya and Timothée walking the desert in funky spacesuits fighting over spice. Well, welcome to Mount Baldy, our very own real-life version of Dune, minus the celebrities and giant worms. Instead of space drama, we're dealing with something even weirder. A dune that's literally eating people. Mount Baldy rises over Lake Michigan like a giant sandy mountain, looking totally normal. But under all that sand, there's a mystery that's got scientists scratching their heads. It all started on a sunny afternoon back in 2013, when a 6-year-old boy named Nathan was running up the dune. The boy was on vacation with his family and his best friend. They were excited to spend their days swimming in the lake's cold water and soaking in the warm sun. At some point, Nathan and his best friend got tired of swimming and decided to explore the dunes. Their idea of fun was to run up the slopes and then slide it all the way back down. When they were running uphill, Nathan took the lead and saw something weird. A hole. He leaned forward to check it out when the ground literally swallowed him whole. It happened too fast. Nathan was gone before his friend got there. His family freaked out, and for 3 long hours, search teams desperately tried to find him. Don't worry, the guy survived, even though his chances were slim. And since then, scientists have been trying to understand what on earth caused this accident. The weird part here is that dunes like Mount Baldy shouldn't have holes or empty spaces underneath them. Dunes are supposed to be solid piles of sand. For sinkholes to happen, there needs to be running water below ground. This water usually weakens the soil up until the point where the ground breaks beneath the surface and a huge hole opens up. That afternoon that Nathan disappeared, a geologist happened to be passing by and was completely shook by what had happened. Erin Argillen, who tried helping with the rescue, said she never heard of anything like that in her years of studying dunes. She was determined to figure it out though. So, she went back to Mount Baldy and used ground-penetrating radar to scan the dune. That's when she saw the problem was way bigger than expected. Bizarrely enough, there were another 66 hidden holes just waiting to collapse. It was like Mount Baldy was a dune full of invisible traps, and no one had any clue why. Argillen started to speculate what could possibly explain this phenomenon. One clue rests on the history of Mount Baldy. You see, over the years, sand was taken from Mount Baldy for industrial purposes, like making mason jars and other glass products. Some scientists think that removing all that sand disturbed the natural structure of the dune. This disruption could have caused the dune to weaken, making it unstable and creating the weird hollow pockets we're seeing now. But this theory doesn't explain why the sinkholes are only happening now or why they disappear so quickly. These sinkholes sort of look like those old Hollywood movies quicksand. They open up, sometimes swallow something or someone, then they disappear. But real quicksand is not as evil as the ones in the movies. It's a slushy mix of sand and water that looks solid from above, but it collapses into a more liquid form if a heavy object disturbs it. Another theory says it's probably because of fallen trees, buried long ago under layers of sand. These trees could be decaying and leaving behind empty spaces. If the sand shifts just right, it could cause these gaps to collapse, forming sinkholes. The problem with this theory goes back to the disappearing sinkholes. If it were true, the holes would remain open. This next deep hole seems to come out of a totally different Hollywood era. Something like if Jurassic Park met Aquaman. Behold, the famous Sawmill Sink. This wonder of nature is a deep, mysterious blue hole in the Bahamas. Think of it as a giant underwater sinkhole that goes down about 120 feet, filled with fresh and salty water. It's a natural wonder by itself, but also because scientists started to uncover perfectly preserved fossils and ancient bones in it. We're talking extinct species like giant tortoises, crocodiles, and even an ancient rat the size of your backpack. Back in 2004, scientists hit the jackpot when they dove down into the depths of Sawmill Sink and pulled up fossils that have been there for thousands of years. You may think they did not preserve well, but no. The water there is so cold and low on oxygen that everything stayed in tip-top shape, like it had been frozen. The scientists didn't just find long-lost animals, but human remains too. These bones composed a human tibia and sacrum of a Lucayan person, the indigenous folks who lived in the Bahamas about 1,000 years ago. This discovery shocked archaeologists because it gave them a major clue into the lives of the Bahamas' original inhabitants. And speaking of holes, this group of scientists tried digging an insanely deep one just to hear Mother Earth's heartbeat. Hang in there, I'll explain. It started back in 1987, when the Germans decided to dig the KTB borehole in Bavaria. A borehole is a deep hole in the ground used to find oil. These guys managed to dig almost 30,000 feet below the ground. Their mission was to understand more about our planet's inner workings, like tectonic movements, temperature changes, and seismic activity. But as they dug deeper, they were hit with a few surprises. Instead of finding solid, stable rock, they encountered fluids and gas seeping into the hole, which threw off everything they thought they knew. The heat also spiked way faster than expected, making scientists rethink their theories on how temperature behaves deep down. They actually had to stop digging because they reached the insane temperature of 572 Fahrenheit. This whole experiment sparked the interest of a Dutch artist who decided to tag along and do an experiment of her own. She used a geophone, which is an instrument that converts ground movements to voltage, and she recorded sound waves from the hole. When she got the results, she was shocked to hear that the sounds they recorded resembled a distant thunder and almost sounded like a real heartbeat. Okay, so this diamond mine could easily be scouted as a location for some Star Wars sequel, and I'm not even joking. Located way up in the remote wilderness of northern Canada, surrounded by ice, snow, and a lake, sits the Diavik Diamond Mine. Since opening in 2003, Diavik has produced over 100 million carats of high-quality diamonds. But what really makes Diavik special is how it's powered, in part by a wind farm. Yep, they managed to do that even in the cold tundra. When Diavik first opened, it was all about open-pit mining. But now they've moved underground, digging deeper to find those hidden treasures. And to make it all work, they had to build a dike system to stop the lake from flooding the mine. Pretty intense, right? And then there's the Monticello Dam, which sounds pretty Italian, but it's actually located in Napa Valley, California. This beauty was built between 1953 and 1957, and it created Lake Berryessa, which holds the record for the 7th largest man-made lake in California. The lake covers approximately 20,000 acres, which is about as big as Disney World in Florida. And although this lake works as a water reservoir for the northern region of the San Francisco Bay Area, that's not its most important feature. Its most unique feature is known as the Glory Hole. The Glory Hole is a morning glory type spillway which helps to drain the excess water from the dam. It has a diameter of 72 feet at the top, and it can drain an astonishing 48,000 cubic feet of water per second, when the lake reaches its maximum capacity. If you thought about swimming around in the lake, forget it. It's pretty fascinating, but it was forbidden since someone swam too close to it in '97 and was swept inside the spillway. Yikes.
In July 1990, 4 Czech guys decided to go on an adventure to find the Mongolian death worm, a creature that might have inspired the monster you've seen in the movie Dune. They say it lives somewhere deep in the Gobi Desert, so they flew to Mongolia, hopped into an ATV, and hired some local guides to help them. All that to meet a creature that is up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything, and is capable of shooting electricity at those it doesn't like. Legend says that these friendly guys spend most of their days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but they'd like to come out during the wetter months of June and July. So the timing for a spotting was simply perfect. But the crew needed to figure out how to lure the creature. Sadly for them, no one knew what the giant worm liked to eat. So they built a thumper, which is a machine that made rhythmic pounding noises. They were hoping it would call the worm out of the ground. For 2 months, they searched the vast desert, crossing dunes and rocky plains, looking for any sign of the creature. But alas, it didn't really work out. Ivan McCurley, who was the leader of the 1990 expedition, came back to Gobi Desert again. He once tried to attract the megaworm with blasts, and the second time he used a small airplane to scout the dunes. Over the years, groups from America, Britain, and New Zealand organized big expeditions to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many others came from all around the world on their own and found nothing. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At a meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them described it as looking like a sausage, about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so venomous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. In May 2005, 4 friends from Great Britain who search for monsters professionally decided to try their luck. They made drawings of the worm and hired local people to hand out flyers all over the Gobi Desert. These flyers offered a reward to anyone who could give information about the worm or even bring them a specimen. They thought loud sounds that other explorers tried would scare the beast away. Some told them it likes damp conditions, so they came up with a plan to block streams of water to create wet areas that would lure the worm out. Their plan didn't work because it was too hard to build dams in the desert. They ended up using small traps, but didn't find any actual proof that the worm existed. But they did meet locals who shared interesting stories about strange creatures they had seen over 70 years. Over the years, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. It's white-gray or scaly and brown, or maybe fleshy and bright red. Someone said it resembled a snake, or maybe a caterpillar, or maybe it has wings and can fly. And some believe it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. Maybe the stories are so different, and the search operations are so fruitless, because the creature doesn't even exist. Or it could be one of many cryptids. Those creatures like Bigfoot, Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, their existence has yet to be proven. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to catch the mysterious worm. He also learned there was a nest nearby. The scientist bravely approached the hole in the sand and put his hand inside. A giant creature dragged him in, and he was never seen again. Just kidding. He actually found a Tartar sand boa inside. It's a chunky, burrowing, non-venomous snake that has small eyes and gray-brown scales. He showed it to the locals to verify if it was the monster, and supposedly all of them said yes. Most Mongolians who know about the worm still believe it's real. Now, even though people call our supposed monster a worm, it's just what it sounds like in the English translation. Many Mongol cultures have used this word for centuries to refer to any animals they thought to be really dangerous, especially snakes, even non-venomous ones. So, it doesn't have to be a literal worm after all. Worms are soft and squishy, but a creature living in the harsh Gobi Desert would need to be tougher, more like a snake or a type of lizard without legs. Neither of these creatures can shoot electricity or spit acid like they say the death worm does. But some snakes, like cobras, can spit venom that's dangerous for people. If it were real, the creature would have a backbone, and explorers searching for it would likely find some bones or evidence left behind. And there are actually fossil remains all over the Gobi Desert. Scientists found representatives of over 80 dino groups here over the last almost 100 years. It all started with the world's first dinosaur egg nests. This discovery changed all the scientists knew about dinos. It was the first proof they laid eggs. In the following 2 years, the same expedition team unearthed over 100 dinosaurs and took them to the American Museum of Natural History, where you can still see them today. Some of them were swimming around in the Cretaceous Sea that used to be here about 71 million years ago. They resembled modern birds. The mystery of the megaworm is still unsolved, but there used to be another mystery scientists finally managed to explain. Back in the 13th century, a famous traveler, Marco Polo, not the guy from the swimming pool game, crossed the Gobi Desert. He thought he could hear mysterious noises, like the sounds of musical instruments such as drums. He wrote about it in his book and believed he might be hearing the voices of restless spirits. Scientists call these noises singing sands or booming sands. Unlike the squeaky sound you might hear when walking on a sandy beach, these desert sounds are much louder, like a musical instrument playing deep, haunting notes. Over the years, people came up with all kinds of ideas about what caused the sounds, like underground water or winds making the sand vibrate. Not all dunes can do this, and scientists wanted to figure out why. Sometimes the winds might cause a small avalanche on the side of a dune, and then you can hear the magical sound start. But this is rare. So, to study it, scientists had to help the dunes sing. They climbed to the top of a dune and slid down on their backs, using their hands and feet to push sand down. As the sand tumbled, the sound started softly and got louder. They could even feel the vibrations with their hands. So they found out that for a dune to sing, a few special things need to happen. The grains of sand must be the right shape. The dune has to be big, and the sand must be very dry, so no singing after it rains. Inside the dune, there's a hard layer of packed sand that acts like a giant speaker. This layer bounces the sound waves back and forth, makes the noise louder and louder, and creates a haunting melody that can fill the desert air. In other words, the dunes can play tunes. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't help myself with that one. You're wandering across the Sahara Desert, and all you can see around is endless sand. And then, all of a sudden, you spot this mark in the sand. The wisest thing to do is run away from that spot as fast as you can. Because if you squint and focus really well, you'll realize that you're looking at a Saharan horned viper hiding in the sand, waiting for its next meal. Paradoxically, the bite of the snake has never led to human fatalities. But then, why should you run away? Well, let's find out. The Saharan horned viper is one of the desert's most famous snakes and a pro at hiding in plain sight. The Cerastes cerastes, which is this snake's scientific name, is one of the most well-camouflaged creatures in the entire animal kingdom. It can measure between 12 and 24 inches in length on average, but the biggest specimens can stretch up to a whopping 33 inches, nearly 3 feet. And while that might not seem too long, trust me, you wouldn't want one to sneak up on you. Interestingly, the females of this species are larger than the males, which is rare in snakes and gives the females an even more intimidating presence. But the truly unique thing about this viper is, of course, those creepy horns, one above each eye. They give the reptile a dragon-like look, setting it apart from most other desert vipers. Not all Saharan horned vipers have these horns. Some have small nubs or none at all. You could say it's a bit of a genetic lottery. Still, these horns add to the viper's threatening vibe and make it look even more fearsome. But it's not just their horns or size that makes them fascinating. Males and females look different beyond just their size. Males have noticeably larger heads and eyes than females. And compared to their relative, Saharan horned vipers have bigger heads and are more likely to sport these spooky horns. Now, let's talk about what makes the Saharan horned viper a true master of survival: its uncanny ability to blend into the sands. This viper's coloration matches the Sahara's various shades: yellow, pale gray, pinkish, reddish, or light brown. It has an intricate pattern along its back, with dark, semi-rectangular patches that sometimes fuse into crossbars. At the same time, the underbelly is white, and the tail often has a black tip. And it's another trick. Some animals can mistake this feature for a scorpion stinger. This camouflage is the viper's main line of defense and its tool for hunting. The reptile doesn't just slither around in plain view. Instead, it buries itself in the sand. The viper can wiggle its body under the soft desert sand, leaving only its eyes and nostrils visible. Imagine a creature so skilled at hiding that it can lay completely flat and practically disappear, waiting for hours until an unsuspecting mouse or lizard or human wanders by. During the day, the viper also takes shelter under rocks and in burrows left by other animals. Sometimes it even simply hides in the shade of bushes. For a creature that looks so fierce, the Saharan horned viper is surprisingly even-tempered. It won't waste its venom on a threat it can avoid, preferring instead to lie still or try to hide. But when it feels truly threatened, the snake gives a truly dramatic warning. It rubs its coils together, producing a distinctive hissing and crackling sound that lets you know it's ready to strike. And if you ignore that warning, well, this viper's bite is loaded with toxic venom that can be quite dangerous. That's why handling such snakes can be a fatal mistake, as two unlucky handlers in Europe once discovered. Both men were bitten by captive Saharan horned vipers, and the bites caused extreme swelling, blood clotting issues, and even kidney failure. The venom in these bites has special compounds that mess with blood clotting, attack kidneys, and can cause serious internal bleeding. The best treatment for these bites is specific antivenom, but it's clear that the bite of a Saharan horned viper is nothing to take lightly. Now here's another astonishing fact about this reptile. When it does move, the Saharan horned viper doesn't slither in the usual way. Instead, it uses a unique style called sidewinding. Picture the animal lifting a loop of its body, moving that loop forward, and then pulling the rest along behind. This sideways walking lets the snake move across the hot sand without letting its belly touch the ground for too long. In a place as hot as the Sahara, this technique isn't just cool looking, it's essential for survival. While the Saharan horned viper is a champion of desert camouflage, it has some serious competition in the camouflage department. Around the world, there are other snakes that have protected the art of blending into their surroundings to catch prey and avoid being eaten themselves. Like the eastern brown snake, an Australian snake that is one of the most venomous in the world. Its brown color lets it blend in with rocks and soil, making it extremely hard to spot until you're practically on top of it. A bite from the snake can be fatal in less than an hour. Or the eastern copperhead, found in the forests of the U.S. This snake's pale tan and pinkish colors blend in perfectly with autumn leaves. It often freezes in place rather than slithering away, which leads to many accidental bites. Its venom usually isn't fatal, but it's painful, and since the reptile hides so well, encounters are common. The Perengaise adder from Angola and Namibia loves to hide in the sand like the Saharan horned viper. It mostly eats lizards, and its sandy-colored scales make it almost impossible to see. Thankfully, its bite isn't too dangerous for humans. Now look at this terrifying creature. It's the timber rattlesnake. This rattlesnake lives in the lush forests of the U.S. and uses its colors to blend into the forest floor. You might not see it, but if you hear its rattle, take a step back since its venom is potent. The Pacific gopher snake, found on the west coast of the U.S., can grow up to 7 feet long. The only plus in this situation is that this reptile is non-venomous. It camouflages well in forests and fields, but is harmless to people. Just don't scare it, or you'll get a bite, which is still unpleasant. In the rocky terrains of California and Oregon, you might meet the northern Pacific rattlesnake, which likes blending into dark brown and gold rocks. Hearing a rattle is often your only warning, since this dangerous snake is nearby. These next snakes aren't particularly dangerous, but they're unsurpassed masters of camouflage. The smooth green snake has a bright green color that matches the leaves in trees and grass, which makes it practically invisible among foliage. The common European viper prefers hiding among leaves and shrubs, and the harmless common garter snake has colors that blend in with dirt and grass. Keep in mind, though, that even though all these snakes are not venomous, they can still give a painful nip. Oh, and I can't but mention the massive reticulated python. Even though it can grow over 21 feet, this South Asian snake is expert at hiding among leaves and shadows. It's one of the only snakes known to occasionally hunt humans, so tread carefully in its territory. Now, in the wild, snakes like the Saharan horned viper rely on camouflage to hunt and avoid being hunted. They might be blending into leaves, sand, or rocks, but in any case, these snakes have evolved to stay hidden from predators and prey alike. The desert viper buries itself to stay cool and catch food, while forest snakes blend in to hunt in silence or avoid curious humans. For them all, staying hidden isn't just a matter of survival, it's a huge advantage. So, next time you're out in nature, remember that you might be walking right past a hidden hunter, watching you from the shadows with a quiet, horrifying patience. Have fun out there. Well, there you are. The sun is scorching, you're thirsty. All you can think about is water and ancient bones under your feet. You're wandering through the Sahara, the largest hot desert on Earth. Right now, you're crossing a stretch of sand called Whale Valley. And all over these 75 square miles of land, fossils cover the ground so thickly that you can't help but step on them. Paleontologist Hesham Salam says it's an unusual picture in this place. The bones are poking right out of the cliffs, as if they're calling to you to come check them out. You can spot ribs scattered all over the place. Look at these vertebrae. They're giant. Ooh, the creature they once belonged to must have been up to 65 feet long. The fossils show that the animal had a streamlined body like today's whale, but still had features like hind legs and feet. For scientists, it means a very exciting thing. They might have discovered a fully intact skeleton of a prehistoric whale. It was an animal that lived in this area when Egypt was underwater. You see, today, the Valley of the Whales is the world's largest ancient whale graveyard. You're likely wondering what marine animals are doing in a desert more than 100 miles away from the nearest coast. Well, millions of years ago, this desert was at the bottom of a massive ocean called the Tethys, which stretched from Europe to India. When sea levels dropped, the ocean left behind a seabed covered with fossils. And today, the fossils of some of the earliest known whales rest here, which gives researchers a peek into how today's massive ocean whales may have evolved. The fossils here are super detailed, even with some stomach contents still intact. Uh-oh. Scientists have also found fossils of ancient sharks, crocodiles, and turtles, helping to recreate what this marine world looked like millions of years ago. Now, the first whale bones were discovered in 1902, but it wasn't until the 1980s that people really started to explore the area, only when access to this area became better. Sadly, some fossils had been taken away by collectors before the site turned into a protected area. Most of the fossils are just under the surface, slowly revealed by erosion. Whale Valley gives us an amazing glimpse into millions of years of ancient coastal marine life. But let's move further. Ancient whale fossils aren't the only discovery you're going to make today. For over 150 years, scientists have been puzzled by a strange creature that lived millions of years ago. But now, thanks to some amazing fossils found in Morocco, they've finally figured it out. Look at them. These creatures are called blah blah blah. Nah, I'm kidding. Stylophorans. They look like flattened armor with a long arm sticking out. Researchers discovered these creatures in 2014 and were shocked. The fossils dated back around 478 million years. They found around 450 specimens, and to their surprise, some even had soft tissues preserved, which is super rare. Before this, they only knew stylophorans from their hard parts. Originally, scientists thought these creatures were good old echinoderms, animals like sea urchins and starfish. But new discoveries prove that they had a core body and feeding arm similar to modern starfish, complete with a water vascular system to help them move and eat. This finding ends a long debate about where stylophorans fit in the animal family tree. Now we know they're related to echinoderms, but are more advanced because they don't have the typical 5-ray symmetry. Ooh, come here and look at this giant fossil. It was found in the Sahara and gave scientists new insights into the Spinosaurus, the largest carnivorous dinosaur we know about. These 95 million-year-old remains also confirm that it was the first known swimming dinosaur. The Spinosaurus had flat paddle-like feet and nostrils on the top of its crocodile-like head, perfect for staying underwater. It was a pretty weird dinosaur with a long neck, trunk, tail, and a 7-foot sail on its back, so it must have spent a lot of time in the water. At over 50 feet long, Spinosaurus might have been even larger than T-Rex. The first Spinosaurus remains were discovered about 100 years ago in Egypt, but only this new fossil, found in Morocco, helped scientists reconstruct this dinosaur for the first time. Researchers paid attention to the creature's shorter hind limbs and wide claws. These features point to adaptations for life in the water. Its snout and dense bones also suggest it was a swimmer, while its spiked tail likely attracted mates. Hey, good looking, come here often? And here's another astonishing find made in Tunisia, the remains of Machimosaurus rex. Now, so far it's believed to be the biggest crocodile ever. This ancient croc was about 32 feet long and weighed around 66,000 pounds. It was a top predator around 130 million years ago, and its skull was over 5 feet long. Now, this discovery is a big deal because it shows that these crocs stuck around longer than we thought. Before this, scientists believed that they disappeared during a minor extinction event between the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Now, let's go back to the fact that the Sahara was once underwater, and some of the largest sea creatures ever lived there. A study published in the Bulletin of the American Museum of Natural History speaks about an ancient body of water called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. It existed between 150 million years ago, covering parts of Western Africa. Scientists spent 2 decades trying to recreate this prehistoric underwater world. They found it was warm and shallow, home to some pretty terrifying creatures, including 5-foot-long catfish and 40-foot-long sea snakes. Yikes! The seaway was cut off from larger oceans for long stretches, which may have helped these predators grow larger because resources were always available. It's a classic case of evolution at work, leading to what scientists call gigantism in isolated environments. But all that water didn't just disappear with no trace. Under the sands of the Sahara, scientists have discovered a massive ancient lake, which they're calling a megalake. Makes sense? This lake formed around 250,000 years ago when the Nile River flooded the eastern Sahara. At its biggest, this lake covered over 42,000 square miles. It's about half as big as Kansas. They also found evidence of a smaller lake, 93 miles west of the Nile, at a slightly lower level and covering 18,600 square miles. All of this adds to growing evidence that once, North Africa had many lakes that might have created migration routes, helping early humans move across the continent. Now, in the Sahara, you can find not only fossils of bizarre animals. In May 2020, some weird rocks with greenish crystals were discovered in a sandy region in southern Algeria's Sahara Desert. When scientists checked them out, they found out these rocks weren't from Earth. They were actually pieces of a meteorite called Erg-Chak 002. This meteorite is super old, like the oldest volcanic rock ever found. It melted ages ago in the fiery heart of an ancient protoplanet that no longer exists. Researchers had recently published a study in Nature Communications, revealing that they have analyzed lead and uranium isotopes in Erg-Chak 002 and found out it's more than 4.5 billion years old. Another cool discovery made in the Sahara is quite unexpected. A few years ago, scientists found what they think are the world's oldest colors, and they're bright pink. These pigments were uncovered from rocks that are around 1.1 billion years old in the Sahara Desert. The colors came from microscopic organisms, as animals didn't exist back then. The discovery was made by a PhD student who crushed the ancient rocks and analyzed the pigments. These pink pigments are actually ancient chlorophyll from photosynthetic organisms that lived in an ocean that's long gone. Researchers are now sure that this finding could help explain why larger, complex creatures showed up much later in Earth's history. Before these colors were discovered, scientists didn't know what was missing in the food chain that delayed the evolution of larger animals. Now they understand that tiny cyanobacteria were at the bottom of that chain. Apparently, this discovery is not just about finding some old pink stuff. Scientists believe it's a breakthrough in understanding the history of life on Earth.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large, ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Paracetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time, and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was. But they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Paracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life.
You're walking along a hot desert under the scorching sun. You run out of supplies. There's no more water. You dream about rain, but there are no clouds in the sky. With each step, you lose more and more strength and fall. You notice a small pond nearby. Is it real water or just a mirage? You can't get to your feet, so you crawl there. The water is getting closer by the minute, but not because you're moving towards it. It's the water approaching you. In a few minutes, the pond area increases. Here, you're already in it. A small lake is formed, 60 feet deep, at the place where the piece of desert was. This real event happened in 2014 in the Tunisian desert. No one knows exactly on what day the lake appeared, since this part of the south of Tunisia is sparsely populated. At first, shepherds passing by saw the lake and didn't believe their eyes. In the next few hours, hundreds of locals came running to the place. They began to swim, jumping into the water from the surrounding rocks. But a few days later, something strange happened to the lake. In the beginning, it was a crystal clear turquoise blue color, but then it turned dark green. People didn't attach any importance to this and continued to swim. They shouldn't have done that. The scientists and geologists arrived and immediately announced that it wasn't safe to swim in the lake. Muddy green water means the lake is stagnating. It's not refreshed, it's not fed by underground springs. Now the lake is filled with algae and a lot of harmful bacteria that can cause serious diseases. They also found out that this region of Tunisia is filled with huge deposits of phosphate. This substance can disintegrate and leave radioactive traces. The lake can be carcinogenic, toxic, and hazardous for any living organism. But people didn't worry about this too much. They walk in the middle of the desert, while the sun heats the air to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of them are unlikely to refuse to jump into cool water, despite the warnings of scientists. Until now, no one knows exactly the reason for the appearance of the lake. Some scientists believe the lake was formed because of heavy rains. The lake is surrounded by rocks and is located inside a canyon. The water could just accumulate after each storm. Some geologists think an earthquake was the cause of the lake. A small seismic activity provoked the rupture of the Earth's rock above the water table, and through this hole, all the water splashed out. And if this theory is correct, then the lake can be pulled back underground through cracks. This is the same as when you pull the plug out of a drain hole in a filled bathtub. Any small earthquake is like pulling the plug out. Therefore, if you find yourself in these places, don't swim in this radioactive lake. We're going to the Caribbean Islands region. Among the clear blue sea, you can find a unique lake. It's located on one of the paradisiacal islands. You may not even notice the lake right away. The entire territory may seem like a huge concrete platform, but the main thing is not to step on its surface. Pitch Lake is a lake filled not with water, but with liquid asphalt. This is the largest asphalt deposit in the world. Steam is coming from all over the lake as it's hot. The depth of this lake is 250 feet. An entire passenger Boeing could fit there in an upright position. The lake is not fully studied, but scientists believe there's a deep fault in the Earth's crust under it. A huge amount of oil seeps through it. It passes through various chemical compounds and turns it into the asphalt. According to rough estimates, there are about 10 million tons of hot material inside this place. Theoretically, no life can exist in such conditions, but scientists have discovered a colony of microbes. Somehow, these creatures have learned to survive here. This also suggests that life outside of our planet may exist. The largest moon of Saturn, Titan, has many hydrocarbon lakes on the surface. And if the simplest forms of life appeared among a million tons of molten asphalt here on Earth, then nothing prevents them from appearing on Titan. We're going to Indonesia, to the island of Java. You need to climb a large volcano to see the next phenomenon. The volcano is overgrown with grass and trees, but it doesn't seem to be sleeping. Smoke is pouring out of its mouth. You climb to the top and see a clear lake instead of boiling magma. The blue sky is reflected in its bright turquoise surface. But don't try to jump there. This lake is filled with acid. The magma inside volcanoes comes from the deep bowels of the Earth's crust. The incandescent liquid consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake is filled with particles of these metals. In addition, the volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases. When they combine with metals, they form a beautiful turquoise color. You'd better come back here at night. In some places, a lot of sulfur is concentrated. These accumulations come out of the lake and come into contact with the air. When this happens, everything around bursts into bright blue flame. It's safe to observe this from the side, but don't get too close. Nearby, on this island, there's another acid lake. It also releases sulfurous gases into the air, which are easily ignited when in contact with oxygen. And when this happens, the gases burst into a bright blue electric flame. It's difficult to see the flames during the day. At night, you can see these flashes from afar. Our next location is Australia. You start the drone high above the forest area. Among the green dense forests, you can see a bright pink spot. It's our lake. This time, the beautiful pink color may not stop you from swimming. You can relax here and take beautiful photos. The lake attracts thousands of tourists, but scientists have only recently been able to find out the reason for the unusual color. At the bottom of this salty lake in Melbourne, special algae grow and secrete a red pigment. In combination with sunlight, high temperatures, and a small amount of precipitation, it turns the lake pink. By the way, Australia is not the only place with such a phenomenon. There are lakes with a pink tinge of water all over the world. You can find them in Senegal, Bolivia, Kenya, and many other countries. The water of these places is also salty and contains the red pigment of unusual algae. We leave the hot beaches and fly to cold Canada. Here, we see a frozen Lake Abraham. We step on the ice and notice huge frozen bubbles inside. They resemble jellyfish, and there are thousands of them there. This is methane. It's a highly flammable substance. The grass, leaves, pieces of trees, and any organic substances that fall into the lake become food for a lot of bacteria that emit methane. Upon contact with frozen water, methane turns into tens of thousands of frozen balls. When the ice melts, the bubbles burst and sizzle. This phenomenon can also be observed on some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, the size of the bubbles can reach several times more than balloons. It's a beautiful sight, but it's not safe, since methane ignites when it contacts with air. We're in the coldest place of our journey. It's Antarctica, near the driest desert on Earth. A dry place doesn't mean it has to be hot. It's an area with minimum precipitation. The desert isn't sand and cacti, but a place where almost no living life inhabits. Some areas of Antarctica meet these two criteria. However, in this icy desert, you can notice a tiny lake. Its depth is only a few inches. Technically, it's a pond, but the most amazing thing is that it stays in a liquid form. The temperature here drops to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit. The pond should be frozen, but this doesn't happen. Don Juan Pond is one of the saltiest reservoirs on the planet. The amount of salt here doesn't allow the water to freeze. Scientists have been studying this lake for more than 60 years, but they still can't find out the exact reason for the appearance of water here.
There's a place on Earth so dangerous that even the most fearsome creatures of today wouldn't last a moment there. It used to exist in what we now call southeastern Morocco, the land called the Kemkem Beds. The story of this place stretches back to the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. It might have looked like a beautiful place at first sight, a lush green forest, rivers glittering in the sun, until you meet some terrifying dinosaur. The lions or sharks of today are nothing compared to what the fossils show us. The Kemkem Beds were dominated by terrifying predators, and above them all, 3 of the largest predatory dinosaurs ever discovered. For example, Spinosaurus. This dinosaur was unlike anything you can imagine. A half reptile, half monster standing over 50 feet tall, bigger than a T-Rex. This hybrid with a crocodile-like snout and a sail on its back hunted the forests. But this dino could dive into the rivers, so not even waters were safe from it. It could catch huge fish, as if plucking them from the shallows. There was also Carcharodontosaurus, a carnivore with the name that literally means shark-toothed lizard. Its razor-sharp teeth could slice through flesh with terrifying ease. This monster stood almost as tall as a house and was faster, stronger, and more aggressive than nearly anything that had ever walked the earth. There was also Delta Dromedus, a raptor-like dinosaur built for speed. It was a quick-moving ninja that stalked its prey with horrifying precision. Oh, and the skies were a fun place too, with all these pterosaur creatures flying around. These guys are often mistaken for flying dinosaurs, but they were actually a different kind, more like close cousins of dinosaurs. These majestic reptiles soared above the Kem beds and had wingspans that could stretch up to 30 feet. The fingers were feathery, with a fourth finger kinda like bats. They could glide through the air so easily thanks to their super light skeleton. But it wasn't just the dinosaurs that made the Kem beds so horrifying. The waters also hid their own dark secrets. They were home to giant, terrifying fish and crocodile-like creatures. Their jaws were strong enough to crush bone, and they were lurking beneath the surface, waiting for anything unlucky enough to stumble into their path. One of the river creatures was Sarcosuchus, also called the super croc. Being about 40 feet long, it could easily swallow an adult human. Or better yet, it could take on a full-grown dinosaur and win. Its jaws snapped with unimaginable force, and no creature, not even Spinosaurus, was safe from it. Coelacanths could also hang out in the rivers. It was a monstrous predator that could easily swallow a huge fish whole. They had these creepy, icky fins that moved in a way similar to how human arms and legs move. And they could also kind of raise their heads like humans because of a special joint in their skull. Ew. Fun fact, we thought these monsters had gone extinct 60 million years ago, together with dinosaurs. But recently, we rediscovered them living and thriving in the Indian Ocean. Turns out they were just hiding in the deep waters. They probably didn't even notice the dinosaur asteroid or humans at all. Yay? Don't worry, over millions of years, they became basically harmless. They got 4 to 5 times smaller, even though they still weigh about 200 pounds. Just imagine what they were like back in the day. Kem waters were also home to giant lungfish and other creepy aquatic creatures. So you couldn't even drink or take a swim safely without getting bitten by something. Whew, what a place. Even turtles there were the size of cars. Imagine trying to survive in a world where creatures like this are literally everywhere. And I mean everywhere. This place was unique not because huge beasts lived there, but because of the sheer number of predators. You might think, it shouldn't be that easy for all these predators to hang out in one place, right? And you're right. Seems like prey was scarce there. That's even more chilling. All the predators just wandered around, hunting whatever meager life remained. And if there's none, then fighting each other. For years, scientists have wondered why it was the case. Maybe that's just how life was back then. And all corners of Earth were crazy like that. Or is there something special about this place? Some even say that maybe it's just because we only found predators' fossils, while normal friendly animals have disappeared, and that the fossil record might be skewed. But who knows? And the environment itself was just as fascinating as the beasts who lived there, just a bit more friendly. It's hard to imagine, but back in the day, this desert was a green paradise, humid and full of rivers. The heat of the sun scorched the land. The climate was hot, so hot that even the poles were warm. The weather there was extreme. Dry seasons followed by intense storms, which shaped the land and life. The giant rivers carved their way through this landscape. They stretched from the Sahara, emptying into the ancient Tethys Ocean to the north. If you were there, you'd see vast, interconnected basins, and beyond them, the central Atlantic Ocean. The floodplain stretched out beneath a sweltering sky. The rivers were just as wild as local animals, flowing lazily one day, but raging like furious beasts the next. At first, these rivers were powerful, carving deep channels through the land, and creating wide sandbanks. But over time, they slowed down, and the landscape changed into shallow ponds and salt-covered flats. As water gradually faded away, it left behind a patchwork of wetlands and slow-moving waters. Right now, the Kem Beds is a vast, rugged desert where time has stood still for millions of years. If you visited it, you'd see a giant escarpment, its rocky face winding along the border of Morocco and Algeria, bathed in the sun's harsh light. Beneath your feet would lie layers of fossilized history. That's one of the reasons why scientists were long fascinated with this place. It must be one of the most comprehensive collections of fossils ever discovered in northern Africa. There are fossils from other parts of Africa, of course, like Egypt's Bahariya Formation. But they don't tell us much about life during this time, not like Kem. That's all because those rivers we mentioned in hotter and drier places, they've eroded or still remain buried under the sand. The first discoveries from Kem began in the late 1940s. A scientist named Schubert uncovered bony fish fossils among the escarpment near the Morocco-Algeria border. Just a few years later, a paleontologist, René Lavoca, took things to the next level. Traveling by camelback, he scoured the desert landscape and uncovered a real treasure trove of fossils. He found the partial skeleton of a massive herbivore dinosaur. Finally, at least one peaceful creature in the Kem Beds. This long-necked giant roamed the ancient river valleys and ate leaves like a good boy. For the next several decades, scientists only did small-scale fossil hunting expeditions to this place. There were modest discoveries made here and there. Then, in the 1970s, German paleontologist Helmut Alberti led his team to the Kem Beds, and that's when things took a wild turn. They uncovered fossils of prehistoric fish, crocodiles, dinosaurs, and pieces of the infamous Spinosaurus. Imagine being one of the scientists on that team. They were probably jumping from excitement. By the mid-1990s, the fossil game changed dramatically. Incredible new species were identified from the Kem Beds. Over the years, the discovery pace has only accelerated. Paleontologists, armed with new tools and techniques, have uncovered more fossils than ever before, and there's only more to come.
Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently in danger. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.